Good morning, everyone. My name is Claudio Mazzoni, and this is my video for the midterm in the class CIS9467. I was browsing online, and I could not help but to notice an article by CNN related to the population growth of the world and how will we be able to feed 9 billion people by 2040. Another article I read the same day, I learned that with the rise of the middle class in developing countries, meat consumption has gone up sharply. The articles got me wondering which countries are feeding its people the most meat, and is that an indicator of improvement on their economy? Meat is a highly costly commodity to produce that requires high amounts of lands and labor, which means that in theory countries that can afford to produce it or to purchase it should be experiencing a rise on the standard of living, their economy. So this presentation will try to find whether this can be true by showcasing our data, by using an array of visualization tools that we learn on this course. We also want to know whether or not is there a trend in the meat consumption, is there a preference by region, and where are we going in the future? We're gonna look into the trend of meat consumption all the way to 2025. Full disclaimer, this presentation only includes beef, chicken, pork, and lamb, as is what mostly requires land, money, and labor to produce. Fish, although you have the labor cost of fishing, it really doesn't have an impact on the land and resources as much as these other proteins. We're also going to use the consumption per capita of countries. So we're not going to use the nominal numbers. We're going to use how much meat per year each individual consumes. And the data we're getting is from the OECD. All right, let's begin. I built this dashboard that has a couple of multiple pivot charts, some slicers, and some other cool features that I will show you in a second. The first pivot chart has historical meat consumption by country. Now we have selected all the countries that our data source we have on our data. It does include every single country, mostly countries from the OECD and Europe as a cluster. So they're about, like I will say, about 80% of the world countries are here. Just so you know. Here you can see how are we going in terms of our consumption of beef, chicken, sheep, pork. As you can see, since 1995, the consumption of chicken has gone up sharply, while the other meats besides pig have kind of plateaued, and that trend seems to continue all the way to the year 2025. You can see the trend in the dashed line. Thanks to our slicers, we can filter by country. You can see that certain countries like Uruguay, the consumption of proteins have, for the most part, gone up, down. It's very erratic, but for the most part, beef seems to be on top, and the other animals might be still kind of like below, with mostly 10 pounds per year. So, United States, you can see a trend here as well. Let's go to the next one. So this pie chart gives us a glimpse of the consumption of proteins by income bracket of the country. So I broke down the income bracket that the countries fell onto. and I broke it down in high income, upper middle income, and lower middle income and low income countries, and the whole market share of all the proteins in the world and where they fall into. As you can see, beef, for example, is mostly consumed in upper middle and high income countries. So is pig, as well as chicken and sheep. Unfortunately, you do see a very small bracket of the low income countries consuming proteins, despite the fact that it was one of the biggest brackets in terms of the population. We go our data here. You see that we have a lot of low-income countries. However, their consumption is very minimal compared to other countries. It's unfortunate. Moving on. Here we have consumption by region. I also wanted to find out whether or not is there a preference in the proteins of the individual regions out there in the world. You know, everybody says I'm Hispanic, and everybody says that chicken is a staple of Latin American cuisine. And you can say the lamb is a staple of the Middle East. So I want to find out, is this 100% true? And what I discovered was that in certain aspects it is. As you can see here, the Middle East and North Africa has the biggest consumption of lamb, sheep out there compared to other regions. Chicken is mostly consumed in North America, but also in Latin America and the Middle East. Surprisingly enough, actually, it's a big staple here. Beef, on the other hand, is also highly consumed in North America, but also is consumed in Latin America as well. So maybe those stereotypes don't add up 100%. It seems like people in South America and Latin America prefer beef just as much as they prefer chicken, if not so more. I also constructed this Bings map in which I tied it to a pivot data. And here I can see which meats and proteins are mostly preferred. You can see that chicken is a big staple in Israel. Okay, moving on. Here we have a representation of our map, but in a cluster column setting. This is a little bit more clean to see. Bing maps, although really cool, I have encountered it to be a little bit difficult to refresh on. Still a cool feature. We can also break down the patterns by tree. Lastly, I constructed this meat consumption trend. And right now we're selecting all the countries in the region. And we do see a spike in consumption of proteins from 1992, 1993. And that really goes up in major factors. Chicken has gone up dramatically compared to other proteins. And we can see that, for example, we look at Argentina, chicken production has skyrocketed. A beef consuming country has adopted chicken as a staple of their protein source rather than beef. Beef has gone down significantly. I used a moving average trend line of 2 years to showcase where more or less where the pattern's going. So we do see, for the most part, we can also break it down by income bracket nations. So low income countries, for the most part, have been experiencing an increase of protein consumption, which is good. And we hopefully expect it to keep going because it's definitely important for people to have a meat on their diets. It has zinc, iron, proteins is what we have on our hair, our nails. It's paramount that people consume proteins. So hopefully we will see an improvement on the standard of living of these countries as well. Well, thank you very much. This concludes my presentation. Have a wonderful day.